which is based on a product from Vodafone called Storm, which has all of that in a box. It's a cloud contact center. It does all those components, and we can retire all that infrastructure and take that infrastructure out. And again, that took less than 6 months to implement. And we're rolling out. That's the base layer, and then we're rolling out applications on top of that. But the pace of change there is quite fast. And then on the web with the Hybris web and the digital world comes with a whole host of application services that you plug into and buy and plumb in. Some of those are around the digital teams, digital marketing type stuff. So there's all the stuff around pay-per-click. There's all around Google Feeds and all the other kind of core analytics things you need to have in order to be able to trade the site. Most of those are operational services that you plug into. We also we've also put rich relevance for recommendations, Bazaar Voice, and we use a product called Qubit, very similar to. There's a number of these products that allow you to adjust what you see on the front end of the service by kind of overwriting what's there. So if you pop up a screen and actually want to move the button around on the screen, you pop up the basic screen, and then Qubit picks in and goes, you're on this screen, that button shouldn't be there, I'll move that button somewhere else. And it can adjust completely. In fact, it can replace the whole screen if you want it to. So you can use that for very fast A/B testing, and you can use that for very, very quick movement of services or correcting faults. And then you get a little bit more time to be able to fix it in the actual code within the website code. So it's a very, very agile solution. Again, that's driven by the digital team, and we provide the tools to them for that kind of work. So that's Basecamp really that we're at, and then now we're looking at how we sort of transform the systems and how we grow an omnichannel piece, because at the moment what we've really got is, I would consider them as sort of silo channels. So we've got the data for our operate for our stores in one set of systems. We've got the data for the web channel in a different set of systems, and we've got our product information in a third set of systems that supply the other ones. So we kind of need to join all those up. And again, focus I've got is how can I do that in a really simple way, and how can I do that in a way that still keeps a team of 20 people. I'm going to talk now really about a number of different approaches, all of which are kind of applicable. And as I say, none of them are really new, but actually they kind of work pretty well in today's world. So the first one is about how do you interface this new digital stuff in with the legacy systems. And the core issue with the legacy systems, from my perspective, is you've got tons of point-to-point interfaces in there, and you can't unpick those point-to-point interfaces very well. And when you change your business model and the way you want to use the way the systems work together, you find the systems don't quite work that way, they don't quite align, so then you end up with sensitivities, pinch points, and areas where the systems will break. You need to introduce more flexibility, and if you're changing the top end of that, the digital end, much faster, you need to introduce a lot more flexibility in at that layer. So we're putting an enterprise service bus in there. Again, that's a very easy term. It's talked about a lot. It's supposedly the suppliers would have you think it's a very easy thing to do. You can buy the technology very easily. You can put the technology out there, but actually making it effective is really, really hard. And it's all about the way that you reorganize the way you do work, the way you define the patterns and the style of how you use the thing, so that you don't end up with a lot of separate applications in there. You end up with a consistent way of doing it, because you need to govern the information across these areas and govern the way that the legacy systems couple up with the new digital world. In some ways, it's about the data that's in the systems and the way the data flows around that's really important here, because it's about understanding those data structures and reflecting them through and joining up the way the data structures will work in the new world, the digital world, with the way they're constrained within the legacy systems. And you've got to create the right architecture and structure of the services that you build in the ESB in order to layer that in an appropriate fashion. That's the trick with those. And then you need an ESB that's the right complexity for the environment that you've got. There are, you can have your web spheres and your fusions, which I've worked with, which are beasts to manage, and then there are a lot of lighter weight ones, open source ones, and other ones that you can use that are far more packaged and useful. The other bit to be careful with in the ESB space is around management of the service and performance of the service. Quite a lot of the tools don't come with service management components, and an enormously important part of that piece, if you're putting a lot of volume and scale through it, is about managing the way that service runs and making sure that your operations functions know how to tune that service, because it operates in a different way. Effectively, normally they're used to tuning point-to-point interfaces. Here, you're giving them a common bus, and therefore you can get even bigger traffic jams on that bus if you're not careful. So, and we're re-engineering the way that we feed the enterprise data warehouse. So currently, it's fed from standard feeds that we've got from legacy, which is constrained by that. But now we can start feeding it much more real-time data. So when somebody goes and buys something in a shop, within a few minutes we can have that particular transaction loaded into the data warehouse. So we'll be doing that much more real-time. Systems of record, I think it's a little bit of a hobby horse for me. I think it's really important. It's about where do you control those. At the moment in our legacy systems, the systems of record are actually spread across several systems because of the history and the way they've been built. They got built, we had a core general merchandising systems, and then we had to have some extensions to add the attributes that needed to go on the web, so that get put into a separate system, and you can kind of see how that's kind of grown up. And they're in these systems on this really old technology. We need to move it to modern technology. So and we want to put it in a space where it's managed in an enterprise fashion. Hybris is the most enterprise application package that we've got, and SAP is modernising that and keeping it current for us. So we're going to move our master product data across to Hybris, and we're also going to move our master customer records. So that's going to be the Omnichannel records for the whole enterprise. So when you go into store again and buy something, actually the record of that purchase is going to sit effectively in our website. And rather than a lot of retailers I suppose retailers of larger scale than us that need to have a back-end system or have historically got a general merchandising system, and then they copy the data into something like Hybris or another website package to support that, we're seeking to make that product record actually the master record for the organisation. So that will be the central MDM record, and it will be, and we're seeking to avoid having to do very much on the ERP side. So we're trying to avoid implementing ERP here. Northgate, we already have employee records and financial records secure, and we outsourced our warehouse function, and we took that out of the legacy system, and then we moved that across to some systems that iForce look after for us, who are our outsourced partner for the warehouse. They run the operation there. The other thing we can do is free up data, and I've done this in a couple of organisations where you can take effectively a copy of your operational data. If you take that on a regular basis, put it into a data warehouse, then you can kind of transform that, or you can analyse that in a lot of different ways. So you can get around quite a number of the constraints that are in the legacy system by being able to apply different filters to it. It's a fairly classic thing to do in retail, where your core product system might not support different organisational hierarchies. You might want to present product grouped into categories, like say a clothing product onto the website in one way. Organisationally, you may have a different way within the organisational team which you manage that. Traditionally, Some of the legacy systems don't support those multiple hierarchies.